So Prince was super prolific, put out about an album a year. But that was not enough for him, and he actually went to war with his record label, partly over the issue of not being able to put out as much music as he wanted. I think the problems really started around the time of Sign of the Times, when he wanted to be a triple album called Crystal Ball, and the label said no, and he went back and had to retool it into a double. And I think he wanted in general to put out more music more often, more than just one album a year. Wanted these double albums, triple albums in some cases, and he finally really just had it with his label. Part of that was due to wanting to own his own masters, his own master recordings. And we all know he put Slave on his cheek for a long time. I saw him during that period a couple times, and it's great. But it's kind of a core question, right? How often should artists put out music? And maybe it's just when I was a kid or looking back at classic rock records. I personally just love the cadence of once a year. I love it when every year, you get like you get the 1998 edition, then you get the 1999 edition. Now I'm probably picking the wrong years, because by that time a lot of bands were doing like a record every 2 years or 3 years. And now for a lot of bands, it seems like it's about every 4 years that they put out a record, and then they have a major tour around it. But that's not the case for a lot of bands. Some bands just put out music constantly, and that's kind of who I want to talk about today, is those bands and just how people handle it. Do you go out and buy all this stuff? Do you listen to it all? Does it stick with you? For me, some of these bands, it's like when I used to subscribe to the physical edition of the New Yorker, just like breed on the coffee table. I mean, just constantly coming in. You can't even keep track of it. You're not reading the articles. In this case, you're not listening to the songs. You're not remembering them. You're not diving into the lyrics, because it just comes at such a fast speed. And I find it hard for a lot of these bands to talk to anybody about it too, because there's always the new one. Case in point, Guided by Voices. Big fan of the band, got into them in the mid 90s and been a big fan ever since. But they put out albums so much, so constantly, that I have a hard time keeping up. And I generally, though, do tend to stream the new ones a couple times, see what I think of them. But then I've got a friend who he buys them, but he's on like a delay of like a year, it seems like. So he'll buy one of these recent records, and by that time they might have 3 other records out, and he'll want to talk to me about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm drowning in this stuff. Where do I go back to that? And I find that it just doesn't stick with me. So I think a lot of this for me comes down to quality control. Like, I want to, if I'm putting hard-earned money towards buying a record, a physical record, vinyl's pretty expensive these days, or even listening to it streaming, I want to believe that the artist put time and energy into creating something special. A lot of people write songs. Not every song that you write, not everything you record is genius. Not everything needs to be heard by the whole world. But so many of these bands putting out records constantly, it just feels like they don't have an editor. They're not curating things. And in my mind, oftentimes you end up with records that just sound kind of disposable. There's not the classic songs on there that you keep coming back to. And maybe it's just, like I was saying, that you just can't possibly keep up with it. So I have some examples. Guided by Voices, who I was just talking about, they have put out, since they reformed with, they reformed with the classic lineup. They broke up again. Broke up for good for a while there. And then Robert Pollard put out a record under Guided by Voices called Please Be Honest. After that, he hired a band of different people to become Guided by Voices. And that band has been with him now since 2017. How many albums do you think they put out since 2017? I think for a lot of us, 2017 does not feel like it's that long ago. They put out 18 studio records since 2017. Ryan Adams got Me Too'd in 2020. Kind of seemed like he went away for a little while, but Ryan Adams has put out 15 records since he was Me Too'd in 2020. Ty Segall, I couldn't count them all, because Ty Segall records not only under his own name, but under a lot of different configurations and a lot of different names, collaborations, that kind of thing. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, they put out the first album in 2012. Again, doesn't seem like it's that long ago. I mean, it is, but 2012 was what, 13 years ago? They put out 26 records. And you can go back and go, well, the Beatles and the Stones and Led Zeppelin and the Who and Alice Cooper and all those bands in the 60s and early 70s were putting out multiple records a year. Yeah, but they didn't sustain that for very long. It's not like we have 26 Beatles records that were recorded in 6 or 7 years, right? And the Rolling Stones, same thing. They eventually start slowing down, but these bands are just going at a steady clip for like a long time. The OCs, they have a record going back to 2003. They've changed their name constantly, but they have 29 studio records, and most of those have come, I would say, since like 2011, 2012. Daniel Romano, I'm getting into Daniel Romano right now, and having a little bit of a hard time with it because he has so many records. I bought 2 of them, been listening to those. I've been streaming 2 rather steadily, and there was one other one I was into for a while, so I am kind of making my way through it. He put out 9 records in 2020 alone, and then if that wasn't enough, he decided to put an EP out in 2022. So yeah, I'm finding gold in there for sure, and I'm sure there's tons of gold in these huge discographies, but I'm just curious how people handle them, how they get through them, how they do they even keep up. If you find out that an artist has 17 records that were made since 2018, are you like, oh, give me a break, I'm not even going to listen to any of them? I want to feel like it's a special occasion. I want to feel like they have curated this thing. They have put a lot of love into it. There's going to be outtakes from it we might never hear, or maybe they'll show up on some box set. Maybe they tried some different studios. Maybe they tried like 5 or 6 different approaches on some songs. Maybe they edited things down. Maybe they started with 20 verses and they consolidated the verses, and they curated and made this piece of art, and they vested their time in it, and they're asking me to vest my time into it. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to put this thing on the turntable, and I'm going to sit back with the packaging, and I'm going to get into this thing. And maybe when they tour, I'm going to hear those songs because that's their new record. I like that. And I have a hard time, again, with artists that just throw so much stuff out there, and you might see them live and they won't play anything off the record that came out 2 years ago because it's already old news, and there's 4 or 5 new ones since then. Just curious, again, I want to hear other people's thoughts on this. There's also the big question of, is this existing just because we now have streaming? Is music more disposable? You don't have to buy all these to hear them. You can just stream them. So it's just a question of, to me, I guess it comes like a real basic question. Like, if the artist isn't spending much time on it, should we? That may be a bit much because I know some artists can keep it up, but I don't necessarily get excited about an artist that just puts out records constantly as product. I saw a quote from the OC's guy, John Dwyer, I think his name is, saying that it's like a cottage industry. They employ their graphic designers, all of that, putting together the package, putting together the record, and putting it out. And part of it is just the ease of recording, home studios, technology getting better and better and better to the point where you don't have to invest that much to get pretty good sound out of a home studio. And the ease of distribution. I mean, if you're not putting anything out physically, you can put it out on the internet within a day or two through a service and have it on all the streaming services in the world. So that's part of it. I also think that maybe there's niche industries, there's niche markets. Robert Pollard and Guided by Voices, Rockathon Records, I think there are diehards out there that will buy every single record that comes out. And that's probably enough to support him. Maybe he makes more money off that than he ever would, if he had been back with a major label, or even a smaller label like Matador or Merge or something like that. And he must be making enough, or obviously supporting himself and doing what he wants to do. But I do miss the days when I would really look forward to a new Guided by Voices record, because it was going to be something to be excited about, not like a New Yorker that's going to be on my coffee table and I'm like, shit, there's another one already and I haven't even read the last one. That's just what it feels like for me. I'm rambling. I want to hear your thoughts. How do you tackle artists, newer artists. I'm not talking about the Rolling Stones or I don't know, Bob Dylan that have huge, enormous catalogs. That's different. I'm talking about people that put out music at a furious pace constantly and are active right now. How do you go about it? And if you have recommendations for any of the bands that I've talked about that I just can't keep up with, please post those too, because I am genuinely interested in all those bands I mentioned. So thanks.